Join us on the last bus home.
So I was just born this way and I'm going to have to live with it.
Hey, I don't judge you, pal. You do you.
Yeah, well, I'll try. Seeing as I've got you here, I've got some stuff to lay on you.
Sweet. Looking forward to it.
And it's a bit of a treat for you, Lee. I know you've been waiting.
Nice.
I've got the title of today's journey, or whatever. It's called 3 Poltergeist Cases.
Yes, sir.
Imaginative and deep, I know. But I've only gone and selected the 3, not best in the world, 3 of the best in the world. So I'm not saying it's the top 3, but it's they're all definitely in the top 10. Okay. So, without much further, some people may know these, some may not, and some may never have heard of any of them. Okay, so I'll launch straight into the first one. First one, we're local. We're local for this. We've got the Black Monk of Pontefract.
Ah, nice. Yorkshire.
Just when you thought Ponte Carlo had nothing to offer, it has. It's got its own Black Monk. Okay?
Hell yeah.
So, if someone asked you straight, do you believe in ghosts? Most of us would shrug and say no. Yet, belief in spirits threads through every culture. And polls show more than half of some populations admit to it. Science, predictably, has little hard evidence to offer. Poltergeist cases sit awkwardly between two worlds. Stubbornly ordinary people keep seeing and hearing things that refuse simple explanation. So, what a poltergeist does. The word poltergeist, a German term meaning a noisy, restless ghost, fits the behaviour exactly. These are not quiet, mournful apparitions. They make themselves felt. Tapping, rapping, bangs in the night, objects displaced, sudden pools of water appearing in perfect shapes, even things being hurled or transported from room to room. Reports stretch across continents and centuries. Spiritualists often describe 2 parts of these events: a living focus, commonly an adolescent girl at puberty, and a disembodied spirit that appears to use that living energy to act. Skeptics point to attention-seeking children or mass suggestion, yet the list of witnesses includes policemen, priests, journalists, and MPs. People who, you'd think, wouldn't be easily fooled. The House on East Drive. Thanks to Jan Meacham, born in England on the 17th of September 1940. I've got to say thank you to Jan Meacham because it's her research that I've mostly used. It is available in books. I mean, it's not a secret. Poltergeist haunting isn't the Black Monk. And although this will be mentioned again soon, there is a great film. Sorry, we're British. There's a great film called, I think it's When the Lights Go Out or When the Lights Went Out. A very Yorkshire ghost film, but it is based on the Black Monk of Pontefract. Okay.
Scary as shit.
It is a frightening film. Right, so June 1966. Number 30 East Drive, Pontefract. An ordinary summer morning in a very old English town whose priory and castle whisper of ages past. The house stood, unbeknownst to the family, on the spot where centuries earlier a gallows once loomed. Now, if you were to look at this estate on like Google Maps and that, it does seem to be on a hill, and the estate like wraps round it, like all on the hill. So I'm guessing this gallows was at the top. Anyway, the house is built on a gallows, so if it was, like I say, in America, it might have been an ancient Indian burial ground.
Nice.
So the Pritchard family were in the garden. Gran, Sarah Scholes, had gone inside to knit. Like a proper gran. Then the tapping began. At first, it was nothing, a curiosity. But when 15-year-old Philip pushed through the kitchen into the lounge, he found his gran sitting in a shower of grey-white powder, falling from nowhere, from 4 feet above the floor. She assumed mischief. The ceiling was clear. Gran fetched the dustpan and found neat, splashless pools of water on the floor. The tapping grew louder. Joe and Philip lifted the lino. The concrete beneath was bone dry. Diane, 13, took no interest. The water reappeared after they mopped. The authorities checked drains and pipes and left, uncertain. Over the following weeks, the house became a theatre of small impossibilities. Ornaments and cups vanished and later turned up in different rooms. Stones rained on the roof, old keys cascaded down the chimney and struck Jean on the head. Some keys were of a design no one in the house recognised. Crockery shattered, plants were smashed, and a crack spidered across the ceiling. Electric lights switched themselves on and off, and one night a visiting vicar stepped out. The family's grandfather clock toppled from the landing and smashed by the front door. Men of the law, press, and church watched and advised the family to leave. The Pritchards refused. Fred becomes the Black Monk. Local papers first dubbed the phenomenon Mr. Nobody. The family, trying to live with it, nicknamed it Fred. For a long time it behaved almost like a trickster, producing a pair of fluffy gloves that seemed to conduct a hymn singing session before being taken outside and burned. But the tone turned dark. Then, while Jean peeled potatoes at the sink, the air shifted. The hair on the back of her neck rose, and she sensed a presence. She turned and saw a tall figure in a black monk's habit, a cowl hiding its face. It looked solid. She felt no immediate terror, only a curious calm. Then the figure sank into the floor and vanished. The thing that refuses easy answers. What makes the Black Monk of Pontefract stick in the memory is how ordinary the eyewitnesses were and how ordinary the beginnings seemed. A tapping, a shower of powder, puddles appearing without source. The escalation followed known poltergeist patterns and gathered credible witnesses. Whether you call it a restless spirit, a poltergeist key to youthful energy, or a cascade of coincident, explainable events, the story keeps returning. Not as tidy proof, but as a persistent, uncomfortable question. In Pontefract, on that warm June morning and in the weeks that followed, a house refused to behave like a house. And when something that refuses to be neat or rational shows itself to everyday people, neighbours, priests, policemen, it complicates the neat skeptic's answer. The Black Monk didn't hand anyone proof on a plate. He left behind the kind of strangeness that settles in your bones and asks a quieter question. Who or what do we share these old streets with? A reconstruction of what Jean said she saw. Jean was at the sink, the kitchen lamp throwing its usual pool of yellow light over the worktop. She'd been thinking of nothing in particular. A kettle to boil, a day's small worries. And when the room changed its temperature, the hairs at the back of her neck rose, and the soundscape thinned as if attention itself had been pulled away. She felt, rather than saw, presence at first, a pressure at the shoulders, an instant's behind her. Then the shape came into being, tall, impossibly tall, wrapped in a dark habit that seemed to drink the light, a cowl drawn low so the face stayed in shadow. The figure filled the doorway, not drifting, but standing there like a thing that had always belonged to the house. It was solid enough for her to register cloth and weight. It was not solid enough to be touched. For a long second, Jean did not scream. She felt a curious calm, as if the room recognised an old tenant returning. The monk did something that made the air about her taste older. Not with malice at first, but with the old, slow gravity of something condemned. Then, without ritual or fanfare, it sank, not simply vanished, but sliding down through the floor, as if the boards were porous to it, leaving the kitchen quieter and colder than before. Getting some Smurl feelings off this one. When Janet was confronted by the thing in the kitchen. The records and the old gallows. When the press began digging, the town library offered a corroboration that tightened the story. In the reign of Henry VIII, a monk had indeed been tried and hanged near where number 30 now sits. The records were blunt and merciless. Convicted of the rape and murder of a young girl, carried to execution and left to the weather and memory. The local conclusion hardened into a single terrible phrase: the Black Monk of Pontefract, a spirit bound to the very spot of its end. Diane pulled up the stairs. Weeks later, the haunting stopped being strange and started being dangerous. Diane, who until then had been largely indifferent to the commotion, was upstairs preparing for bed when the house went black. The blackout was a prelude. Screams cut through the dark, a raw animal sound that brought the family running. With a torch beam stabbing through the gloom, they watched Diane being hauled up the stairs. Her cardigan was stretched tight in front of her like a banner braced against the wind. Fingers of an invisible force drawing her backwards and upwards. It looked for a moment as if nothing in the world could take hold of her. Then it tightened at the throat. Her screams turned to gasps and the sound of air being pinched out. Joe, Jean, Philip, and a neighbour, if the accounts are to be believed, because there were witnesses from every walk of life, leapt in. They grabbed her arms, her legs, and ragged the fabric of her jumper. For a brutal handful of seconds, all four were dragged, stumbling, until they tumbled back down the stairs as if the house had finally relented. Diane's throat bore bright red marks in the pattern of hands. Later, those bruises deepened into angry purple welts. They revived her with brandy and a resolve that was practical and Yorkshire. They packed a few things and went to stay with relatives. What happened next? Once Diane left the house, the phenomenon dwindled and then stopped. The pattern fits the poltergeist law. An emotional or energetic focus, often a young person, seeds the activity. Remove that focus and the activity fades. The Pritchards eventually returned. They patched the ceiling, mowed the lawn, pruned the hedges, and tried to leave the episode behind like an overlong, unpleasant dream. Why this case still matters. What makes the Black Monk stubborn is not the single unanswerable moment, but the accumulation of ordinary sensible witnesses, police, clergy, journalists, neighbours, who saw things that most people don't see in their houses. The physical marks on Diane, the shattered clock, the raining keys. These are not flourishes of a private tantrum. They are items that resist tidy explanations and push the story back towards the old language. Restless spirit, rackety ghost, poltergeist.
Hell yeah.
In Pontefract, stones remember their own histories. Whether you prefer scepticism or belief, the Pritchard story leaves the town with a quieter, more particular question than most ghost stories do. When a place carries violence in its bones, who or what keeps answering for it?
Tell me the year again.
when this occurred?
1966.
1966. Do you know what? It is a damn shame. The fact that this had so many witnesses, and if that had happened today, someone would have got something.
Someone would have had a phone on him, yeah.
It's an intriguing case just purely down to the amount of witnesses.
If anyone wants a really good account of it, though, there's obviously Jan Meacham's account, but there's a book called Poltergeist, and by Colin Wilson, and his account of it is really in depth.
Methodical man. That is a good book. It's a thick toilet book.
It's a tome of poltergeists.
Hell yeah. They're kind of my favourite of the ghosts, and I'm sure we'll go through a few facts and theories at the end, because I do have my own theory on poltergeists and what they actually are.
Ooh. Well, you can see the actual house, number 30. It's on Street View. It's nothing. I've done my zoom ins. I've looked in the windows. I can't see any funny shapes, but it just looks like your steady council house, Yorkshire council house. There's nothing that makes it stand out from any other house. It's just a semi-detached council house.
And that's what makes it terrifying. So we grew up with, like, I guess, horror movies from the US of A, and just seeing, like, something terrifying in something you recognise. Do you know what I mean? The grim...
Yeah.
Yeah, just the grim Yorkshire terrace. And it's like, it's home and you know it. But, yeah, throw a poltergeist in there and that shits me up way more than a haunted mansion.
Well, neat segue, because our next tale takes us to America. The next one, also a very popular horror film, starring, I believe, old Donnie Sutherland. We've got The Bell Witch Haunting. The Bell Witch Haunting was one of the most documented paranormal events of all time. So there we go. There's a bold claim to begin with. For at least a century, the outline of the tale has remained stable, traced back to Martin Van Buren Ingram's 1894, an authenticated history of the famous Bell Witch. So it's been documented since 1894, or at least in book form. In Ingram's version, a series of unexplained incidents began in 1817 at the prosperous farm of John Bell. The Bell House stood in Red River, Tennessee, about an hour north of Nashville, near the Kentucky line in what is now Adams. John and his wife Lucy had 6 children. Their daughter Betsy was 12 when the disturbances started. One autumn evening in 1817, John, walking through his cornfield, encountered an odd creature unlike any he had seen before. Thinking it a dog, he shot at it and it ran off. Other strange sightings followed. His son Drew reported a peculiar bird soon after, and Betsy claimed she saw the body of a young girl in a green dress hanging from a nearby tree. The phenomena didn't remain outdoors. The Bell home filled with uncanny noises at odd hours. Knocks, the sounds of rats gnawing at bedposts, dogs barking and snarling, and the scraping of chains across the floor. Sheets were ripped from sleeping bodies and pillows yanked away from heads. Before long, the family began to hear a woman's voice. The presence could speak, and did so often. It recited scripture and revealed details about the family that no one else seemed to know. What began as curious and pious soon soured. The voice turned malicious, insulting John, meddling in Betsy's romantic life, spreading gossip, and using racist slurs against the black people the Bells enslaved. Like, being enslaved wasn't bad enough, but being called out as well. Uncool. Word spread through Red River, and the spirit became a local legend. Visitors came to witness the phenomena, including Andrew Jackson, who is said to have spent the night there with his men, trying to provoke the spirit. I believe Andrew Jackson was the 7th US president.
Hell yeah.
You might want to fact check me. We're not known for our facts here. Despite sometimes performing for visitors, the entity's defining and most persistent feature was its intense hatred of John Bell. It treated his wife with an unexpected kindness while relentlessly abusing the family patriarch, tormenting him until his health declined. In December 1820, John fell ill with what proved to be his final sickness. The attending physician found a small vial containing a dark liquid. Upon that discovery, the Bell Witch proclaimed triumphantly that any attempts to save old Jack were futile, claiming she had placed the vial and given him a large dose while he slept. John Bell died the following day. Now, I do believe back in the day, Jack was the nickname for John. So there you go. After his death, the phenomena largely subsided. The witch appeared only intermittently and never again inflicted the concentrated abuse it had directed at John. The fatal outcome is what makes the Bell Witch legend unusual. Supernatural tales rarely claim a ghost inflicted a deadly physical wound, and that singular detail has long driven attempts to explain the case. Hauntings typically invite both supernatural and mundane explanations, mental illness, attention-seeking, or misread natural events. The many famous cases can be reinterpreted that way. The Bell Witch legend resists tidy accounts. There is no consistent, persuasive rationale for why the family was targeted, nor a clear moral for audiences a century later. The witch herself offered multiple conflicting origins, then dismissed them. At one point, she insisted she was one of a spirit of a woman whose grave nearby had been disturbed, and whose tooth lay lost beneath the house. Then John pulled up the floorboards to search. She mocked him and called the story a joke. The spirit's story kept changing. For more than a century, the story's broad shape had stayed the same, largely thanks to Martin Van Buren Ingram's 1894 authentical history of the famous Bell Witch. So there's a hush that settles over Adams, Tennessee, a place where a family story stretched thin between grief and folklore. The Bell family's most violent chapter closed nearly 2 centuries ago, and what remains now is part history, part legend, echoes of something unnerving, but not the relentless, targeted torment the Bell household once endured. The original hauntings end. What ended? The storm of activity that gripped John Bell's household calmed after his death in 1820 and after Betsy Bell's engagement fell apart. The last promise. Witnesses from the time said the presence departed with a vow to return in 7 years. The promised returns. Brief reappearance. In 1828, the entity reportedly spoke once more, this time to John Bell Jr., then went silent again. A later promise. It allegedly vowed to come back in 107 years, 1935, to the most direct descendant of John Bell Sr. There is no clear, widely accepted record of a dramatic family-targeted haunting occurring in 1935 or afterwards. Descendants today, many Bell descendants still live in Tennessee and beyond. Their relationship with the story is generational, told at kitchens and reunions, treated as an odd, defining piece of family lore. No ongoing abuse reported. Contemporary family members who have spoken publicly recall the tales but do not describe living under a continuing severe haunting. Modern activity. What people experience now, the old property in the Bellwitch Cave still draw visitors after dark. Reports of strange, isolated occurrences persist, usually from tourists or property custodians. How to read them? These incidents are episodic and localized, atmospheric, and sometimes unsettling, but not evidence of a continual bloodline-focused curse. So that's the end of that story. But what wasn't included there was a theory that's in a lot of the books, is that the witch was the ghost of a local lady who had, I can't remember her name, but she had a dispute with John Bell over land. And he won, or he sued her, took her to court, I think. But whatever deal they had over land, he apparently reneged on it. And it left her in a bad position. And she ended up, obviously they were both farmers, so I'm guessing she didn't have much crop or whatever. And she ended up being broke and dying.
Shit.
And apparently it was her. Oh no, she didn't die. I think she was still batting, but she claimed, she took ownership of it, saying she was a witch, which is why it's called the Bell Witch. So what do you think, Lee? What are your thoughts?
Cool. So I enjoyed the film. It was a good film. I like that period of America. I know a lot of bad shit happened, but I just like the general aesthetics of it. Fits a horror movie great. This is cool because I think with it being more of a story, if you screw the film out of the way, it's quite dark, and I can get a picture of the Bell Witch in my head. I mean, I know it's Poltergeist activity, largely invisible and non-seen. To me, I always go back to the smells, and again, you shouldn't really, by its law, be able to see a poltergeist, but I shit myself when I hear about a dark shadow. That gets me every time, and I lump that in with the poltergeist law. So that's kind of what I'm picturing within this, in the moments of madness. Just a Bell Witch appears as a dark shadow or just some messed up looking demon type thing. I like it. A little bit more, I'm getting more malevolent vibes on this one than the first.
Yeah, that one had issues. It won't playing games.
Nope.
Right.
But yeah, cool story.
Okay. Well, we're going to go on to our third one. This is a very short one to finish on.
Cool.
But nonetheless, it's another American poltergeist tale. And it's the lesser known, and it's the Great Amherst Mystery.
Nice. I know a little of this one.
It's one of my personal favourites, but actually finding anything out about it is of any girth is difficult because basically it's a short case study. It's not full of, it's not gone full smell. It's just a little bit. So, the Great Amherst Mystery. There are hauntings that live in houses. There are hauntings that live on a person. The Great Amherst Mystery belongs to the latter. An 18-year-old woman named Esther Cox, whose life became the stage for a year-long, relentless ordeal that left a whole town watching, whispering, and trying to understand something that refused simple explanation. It started in the late summer of 1878, after an episode that shattered Esther's sense of safety. A family acquaintance named Bob McNeil tried to force himself on her. Esther told no one at the time, and the wound, seen and unseen, settled into her body and her days. Not long after, small strange noises beneath the sister's bed grew into something far worse. Blankets and pillows flew free from the bed. Her body would swell with pain, then flip from burning heat to icy cold in a breath. She fell into trances and came back with no memory of what she'd said. Writing appeared on the wall above her bed, saying, "Esther Cox, you are mine to kill." Thunderous claps seemed to come from under the floorboards and later from the roof. Objects vanished and reappeared. Fires started for no knowable reason, and voices answered when people asked questions of whatever it was that haunted her. This wasn't a private drama. Neighbours, relatives, doctors, clergymen, and visiting investigators all witnessed events they described as violent and intelligent. A local physician, Dr. Carite, reported rappings and the rustling phenomena, and sounds loud enough to be heard a couple of 100 yards away. A Baptist minister, Dr. Edwin Clay, publicly defended Esther's honesty and argued she was not faking the occurrences. Walter Hubble, an investigator and author, lived in the house for 6 weeks, later publishing detailed accounts and affidavits from a dozen plus first-hand witnesses. Unlike a place-bound ghost, whatever tormented Esther followed her. She left the family cottage, took work in a dining saloon, and the phenomenon moved with her. A knife flew through the air, stabbed her, was pulled free, then returned into the wound. At one point, she was accused of arson and spent a month in jail after a barn burned while she was employed there. The incidents slowly ebbed after that, but the scars on her body, on her reputation, and on the town remained. Esther married twice, had children, and eventually moved to Massachusetts. The sensational year in Amherst, however, never left the record. The case endures because so many credible witnesses described the same impossible things, and because the experience was not tethered to a creaky old house, but to a young woman who could not escape it. For Amherst, the story became a landmark, a small town's collision with something dark, baffling, and unforgettable.
I like that one. More of a classical poltergeist tale for me.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's where it's linked to someone, not somewhere.
Yeah.
That's what
I think the ones that follow people are scarier, the ones that stay in houses.
Hell yeah. Yep. I mean, one of my favourites that's up there, and that's a good one, but the Enfield poltergeist, again, attached to a person.
That's going to be a whole bus journey of its own. That's
definitely.
A monster of a case, is that one?
Yep. Yep.
A lot
100%.
going on there. A lot going on.
Has there ever been in any reports of any full-on... I mean, poltergeists seem to be the arseholes of the spirit realm. They do a lot of, as far as I'm aware, mischievous stuff.
The tricksters, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they get terrifying, get a bit scratchy and a bit throwy and stuff like that, but has there ever been any straight-up, talking like brutal deaths within the poltergeist game?
Well, no, like it said in the Bell Witch one, it's very rare that people get, certainly very rare that people get killed, but even hurt. Because sometimes, when they say objects get thrown, when they actually hit people, it's actually quite gentle.
Right.
When it touches them. But then, there are people who've, took injuries, like the cameraman in that one that you covered where the guy went up in the attic, the cameraman, and he got hung.
Ah, yeah, by the rope.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good skill to have. I'm sure poltergeists could mess you up if they wanted to, but that's interesting that they just seem to be a bit more attention-grabby than murderous. I mean,
Well, it's energy from mostly teenage girls going through puberty. So, unless I suppose the girls themselves are murderous.
yeah, that's interesting. I mean, that's what kind of put me onto that theory was the Enfield Poltergeist. And at the end of that book, they go into it quite in depth about the science side of it. It kind of makes sense to me that it's more of an energy that can be brought on by human sort of energies. Maybe it taps into other dimensions and, for want of a better word, the spirit realm itself.
Although not being, well, that we know of, controlled by these teenagers, but, they're definitely powering it. So they're, I'm sure their personality must have some kind of input.
Definitely. Emotions are heightened back in them days. And we know we give off chemicals with certain emotions. I think there's a lot of things, again, that we can't see all around us, probably. So this could be linked to poltergeist activity. Just the fact that, it gets aggressive and it slams, and it's usually around somebody who's maybe going through the same kind of feelings.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. The poltergeist to me is the scientist ghosts. Do you know what I mean?
It's the ghost's ghost.
Exactly.
No, it's the. Yeah, I think I want to say they're the scariest, but if I heard scratching, it freaked me out. But then when I think about it, if I walked in a room and saw the ghost of a person stood there scratching on the wall, that'd probably be a bit more of an issue for me.
Well, this is where the Smells case stands out, because that was essentially a poltergeist case with the demon of your daughter coming down to get funky with you. Do you know what I mean? I mean, a poltergeist wouldn't stoop to those levels that happen in the Smells, but
poltergeists are classier than that.
this is it, definitely, 100%.
Yeah.
Demons are just randy and
They're just nasty.
Yeah, nasty.
They're idiots.
Exactly.
Yeah, we'll cover them because I think there'll be some good cases. What I might do actually is look at some of Father Martin's cases and see if there's any decent documentation on them.
Within the poltergeist realm. Yeah.
Or just demons in general.
Oh yeah, yeah, yep.
Yeah, I'll have a go.
If anybody, Carlos Martins is your boy.
He is the daddy.
Hell yeah. But no, I enjoy that, mate. I'm a fan of a poltergeist. I've always loved a poltergeist ever since I watched the film, which isn't really about poltergeists, but still
hopefully
classic.
now our listener is a fan of poltergeists.
Hell yeah, boy or girl. Hit it up. Right, mate. I enjoyed that one, but you know what we've got to do? We've got to take this bus back.
Mm-hmm. So, ding ding, and I will see you next time, Lee.
Ding ding, bro. Boy.